Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hazmat 101 Consultant Spotlight. Today we're going to be spotlighting the City of Orlando Fire Department's new hazmat rig. We're fortunate to have Lieutenant Rik Compartment from Orlando Fire Department with us. Rik, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
Doing good. We've seen a lot of each other in the last few days, more than I think we've seen our families. But that's good. It's all good.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
My name's Rik Compartment. I'm a lieutenant with the Orlando Fire Department. I'll hit 22 years this March. And of those 22 years, most of it was assigned to the hazmat team for the city of Orlando. And I served as a firefighter, engineer, and lieutenant on the hazmat team. So it's been a good ride when I was doing that. And I currently am the program manager for Valencia College for their hazardous materials training program.
And he gets to travel around the country with me and I with him, and he keeps me out of trouble when we go to different places. Tell us a little bit about the history of Orlando's hazmat team.
So the hazmat team was founded in July 1983. At that time, everything was concentrated to Station 1, and it eventually expanded to include all the units at Station 1. So we had Engine 1, Engine 101, Hazmat 1, Rescue 1, and Tower 1, with 101 and Hazmat 1 being the core hazmat team. Engine 1 was designated as a dedicated decon unit. Rescue 1 was, or they were all hazmat medics, and Tower 1 handled a lot of the entry and backup operations for the hazmat team. Over time, the city has grown. It's approximately 120 square miles and broken up into 5 districts. So the plan came about in around 2004, 2005 to diversify our response profile and get everything spread out a little bit more, so it wasn't all coming from the core of the city and working its way out. So now we have Tower 7, which covers the southwest portion of the city, Tower 8, which covers the northwest portion of the city, Tower 8 covers the southeast portion of the city. Tower 9 covers the northwest portion of the city. Those are all hazmat capable units also. So Hazmat 1 and Engine 101 running out of the center of the city can respond out to any of those areas and be supplemented by those apparatus and the personnel on them for handling hazardous materials incidents in those portions of the city.
So, full disclosure, I was the hazmat lieutenant on Engine 101. Rik was my relief, and so we were both the shift hazmat lieutenants, if you will, kind of ran the team on that specific shift. And so I went to Tower 9, where I would say our real hazmat calls are at, the rail car leaks, the ammonia leaks, chlorine leaks, and what have you. So explain to everybody, since you have a first due area to cover, what would happen if a hazmat call came in? Like, how would that work?
So Engine 101 still functions as a first due engine company in addition to hazmat. So those personnel could be assigned on a fire call, they could be assigned on an EMS call or an auto accident, which would then make them unavailable for response to a hazmat incident. In those situations, Hazmat 1 would respond with one of those 3 hazmat towers, Tower 7, 8, and 9, to handle the incident based off of the size. If it's a larger scale incident, they might pull more than one hazmat tower. They could pull all 3. And if Engine 101 becomes available, they may break free and go there. But depending on the tier level of the hazmat call will determine how many of those hazmat components come together. But we do have the capability that if Engine 101 is assigned on a call, that hazmat responses still occur in the city, and they're still getting the same level of service as if it wasn't an issue.
And so what would happen if there was a second hazmat call come in?
If there were simultaneous hazmat calls that come in, there is an additional apparatus. It's referred to as HazMat II. It's a smaller vehicle, but carries about 80% of the capabilities as the frontline Hazmat 1. Hazmat 2 is not staffed, so a member of Station 1 would go over and they would drive Hazmat 1 to the scene, and then that could be supplemented by one of those Hazmat Tower companies, while possibly Engine 101, Hazmat 1 are on a call somewhere else. So you could have Engine 101, Hazmat 1 and Tower 8, handling a call on the southeast portion of the city, and Hazmat 2 and Tower 9, handling a hazmat call on the west side of the city.
And you guys use, if I'm not mistaken, you use Hazmat 2 for special events and stuff like that, right?
Yes, so there are special events that occur in the city that we assign a hazmat contingent to. It's an extra duty, so it's not impacting the normal hazmat operations. It's not impacting the staffing or availability of our normal hazmat resources. Those personnel are working extra duty, and they'll cover things like bowl games, concerts, festivals. Anytime we have a significant dignitary, government dignitary come in, those units will be attached to that contingent.
Very good. So, how many calls on average do you guys run a year for hazmat?
On average, the city of Orlando probably has anywhere between 400 and 500 hazmat responses per year.
And I'd say a majority of those are probably hydrocarbons, right? Fuel spills and the like. Yeah, like most departments.
Like the national profile for most departments, hydrocarbons make up the bulk of those responses. In addition to that, have anhydrous ammonia releases from the cold storage facilities, chlorine releases from water treatment facilities, and then white powder calls and anything in between, because there are medical research facilities and laboratories and all sorts of different things going on in the city of Orlando that could justify a hazmat response based off of that profile.
Yeah, I remember in 2001 with the powder calls we were running like 30 or 40 a day. We had to put extra units in service just dedicated for that. You guys also cover hazmat for the international airport and some of the smaller municipalities that surround Orlando, right?
That's correct. We do. We do provide service outside of the city of Orlando for those agencies.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's jump right into it.
All right, so this is a side profile of the current hazmat unit. This unit is the fourth generation hazmat response vehicle for the city of Orlando. The original one was a box van, which actually was transitioned over from being a dive response vehicle to a hazmat response vehicle. Had some suits and meters in it. The second generation was a converted beverage truck, so it was actually a straight beer truck. And I believe that you and I both drove that unit at some point in time.
Yep, and when you didn't push the choke in, it backfired and people thought they were being shot at. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, it definitely had its quirks to it. One of the things that we found over time was that the office was located in the back of the unit, because that was obviously, it's not a customized unit, it was a repurposed unit. We were limited as to where that could be located. So with the office being at the back of that unit, unfortunately, the exhaust also exited in that same area. So personnel that were working in the office doing research or setting up instruments, things along those lines, were actually experiencing exposure to the exhaust emissions from the truck. So when it came time for the third generation, which I believe you had a big hand in helping plan, the decision was made to go with a custom design and to have the exhaust exit through the top of the truck to get the exhaust away from the personnel on scene. Since on hazmat calls, we tend to spend a lot of time with personnel in close proximity to the unit, setting up equipment, doing research, handling different ISTS functions, things along those lines. So that unit was actually a Sutphen cab and chassis mounted with a Hackney body. So a large roll-up door body, and that served very well for quite a while.
Yeah, it was the term is a split tilt cab. So if you're looking at this picture here, you can see where the, for lack of a better term, seam comes down just behind the rear portion of the front right tire there. So that's where the cab would actually tilt, and there was a rubber seal in between there. It worked out pretty good. The disadvantage to that was that if we ever had problems with the seals, water could potentially get into the computer area, the printer, and basically the workstation of the hazmat office.
Yeah, it was a good idea, because the idea was that when maintenance was done, that the front portion of the cab would tilt for maintenance purposes. The office portion of the cab would stay intact.
Right.
it had its pros and cons. With this fourth generation, we went away from that split tilt cab, and now the cab is actually no longer has an office contained in it. It is a cab set for 5 personnel.
So if everybody's looking at the front of this picture now, the front of the truck has a compartment on top of the bumper. As I understand it, this particular rig is hopefully going to be staffed of 4 or 5 people because its idea was to be a hazmat heavy rescue. We have a heavy rescue in the city that has 5 people on it. Their job is to respond to fires and extrications, but their specialty is TRT. And the idea was to put this vehicle in service with the hopes of eventually having the staffing so that it would run fires and extrications on the opposite side of the city, but its specialty would be hazmat. So you have some crossover, but each still independent of their own. So with that being said, what is in that compartment on the bumper, Derek?
So that front bumper compartment, if you open it up, there's hydraulic tools in there for performing extrications. There's also electrical cord reel and connections, in addition to pneumatic connections. So those things also perform functions on hazmat incidents as far as being able to drive pneumatic pumps, pneumatic tools, things along those lines. So it fits both missions of the current hazmat profile and also the expanded profile if it does get into handling those extrications and things along those lines. There's also a winch mounted to the front of it in the event that there was any need for that type of an operation. If you look down the right hand or the left hand side of the truck here, one of the things you'll notice is it is a very large truck. That was one of the other changes. So the previous generation was a single rear axle, and with the plans for an expanding role for this unit, it was actually decided that it would be a tandem rear axle, and it's actually placed on an aerial chassis. One of the big changes you notice as we look at the back side of the truck here is the access way going through the body. This is a full walk-through body, which gave some new capabilities and solved some problems that we had with the previous generations of trucks. So I took the opportunity when I was traveling to go visit the hazmat team in Chicago, hazmat teams in Arlington, Seattle, and different places across the country, and look at what kind of response vehicles they had and ask them questions about their design considerations. And other than obviously the weather conditions that they have up there that would make this a far more useful configuration, one of the other benefits was having the PPE and the instrumentation on the inside. So basically those things that are sensitive to temperature changes, humidity, dust, dirt, things along those lines, being able to put them into a controlled environment. When this apparatus is in quarters, it's hooked up to shore power, and the AC units are maintaining a climate-controlled environment in the truck that extends the life of the PPE and of the instrumentation inside of there.
And when we have our 3 to 6 o'clock afternoon thunderstorms during the summer, the guys don't have to get dressed out in the rain, which is always a bonus.
Yeah, it definitely reduces the exposure to the elements. So it's a huge benefit over the previous generations of trucks to have that capability of keeping a cleaner area and a less exposed area. So here you'll see one of the compartments that was configured with PPE for rapid dress out of level C. So you've got your PAPRs, the Ceranic suits, and all the different gloves, equipment, things that they would need for rapid level C dress out. So this would typically be used on those powder calls that happen rather consistently because we have a federal courthouse and then of course the county courthouse. So you'll get threatening letters, things like that at those areas, and having the ability to rapidly deploy a level C ensemble is reduces the amount of time that we're impacting the community at large.
It's nice to see how it's all set up, one area to go to get everybody dressed out. That's great.
Yeah, and then this next area here just is more PPE. So we have the protective head coverings there, the hard hats that can be used for a confined space operation or even hazmat incidents. A lot of times we neglect to think about the fact that we should be wearing head protection anytime we're in chemical protective clothing, just because of the fact that reduced visibility, overhead obstructions, it's given us some safety there.
Right.
So when we moved away from the split tilt cab to this walkthrough design, one of the things that we did was create standing workstations. Instead of having a designated and dedicated desk where someone sits down, which takes up a lot of space, this standing workstation accomplishes the same task, and the personnel just stand there while they do research, reference, setting up the comm systems, all of those things. So it reduced the amount of unused space, because realistically we found we were only using that sit down desk maybe 2 to 3% of the time. So we were able to regain that space for storage and other equipment.
And the walls there on both sides, those are dry erase board capable, or actual dry erase boards, right?
Correct. You can write on those walls. So if you have to make a quick note while you're doing something that you're going to come back to, you can jot it down there on the wall, and you don't lose the information or forget about it or have to ask for the information again. You could jot it down real quick, and then when you get a chance to handle it during your research, you can go back through, cross it off, erase it, whatever you need to do.
Nice.
On the other side from this, you'll see the meter service area. So this is an area that was designated for being able to do calibrations, some light level repairs on instrumentation, just some simple maintenance type tasks, because at Station 1 there is a full meter shop where a lot of the heavy breakdown of equipment is taken care of as far as rebuilds and things like that. But this expanded a little bit of that capability out into the field to where some light service and maintenance can be done on the unit itself.
And you guys go around to the different stations that have meters and do the monthly calibrations, right, with this?
Yes, the hazmat unit will go out once a month and handle any calibrations. If someone's meter was maybe saturated or it's not acting appropriately, they'll try to see if it's a simple calibration fix. If not, they'll leave a spare meter behind and then bring it back to the main workshop. One of the big improvements with having the walk-through cab design was being able to bring the instrumentation to the inside and get it out of the protective cases. So the instruments are still protected by being put into custom-cut foam holders, but by taking them out of the cases, we reduced the amount of space that the meters were consuming. You'll notice that meters are relatively small, but they have large protective cases, which are great for shipment and transportation, but not really the greatest when space is a premium, which on every fire department apparatus, space is always a premium. By having this setup, the instruments are not out of sight, out of mind. They're right there in front of you. They can be fired on every single day to make sure everything's up and running the way it should be. Then this compartment does have some parts, accessories that may go with those things that are better suited to be in cases. In addition, there's some instruments that are actually built into their cases, like the FTIRs, so those go into that area there. Then we have the SCBA cylinder storage for the hazmat response. So these are separate from the fire cylinders that we'd use for SCBA. So basically maintaining a clean hazmat cylinder versus cylinders that are exposed to products of combustion, which are stored on the outside of the unit.
And those are 60-minute bottles versus the 45 minutes for fire, right?
Correct. The hazmat uses 60-minute bottles. This is a view going from the walkthrough into the cab. So like I said, it's a full walkthrough from the cab all the way out to the back of the truck. Taking you into the cab is configured to be able to support 5 personnel, which the expanding mission of the truck would hopefully see it go from its current assignment of an engineer to a full crew when they start to have that expanded role and be able to go out and do more hazmat surveys, training, as in addition to bringing more VMR and RIT capabilities to the department. So this is the right front compartment, right number 1. This is the tool storage area, so you can see the toolbox there, different tool components in the cases. In addition to that, that lower drawer usually is going to have parts and pieces. So if there's a valve assembly that maybe needs to be manufactured on site to handle the release, we have some parts and pieces there that could be put into use to help control that situation.
And the generator and hydraulic stuff's right underneath that.
Correct. Yeah, that's for the generator and hydraulic area. So it's vented to reduce any heat buildup there for when those things are operating. Next compartment here, this is Rik Compartment number 2. This is where all the majority of the plugging and patching kits are. So you've got your chlorine kits, your plug and patch kits, leak sealing bags, the pneumatic bags. You also have brooms, shovels, and floor jacks in the event that we need to stabilize something. You also have the lifting jack there. So if we need to get underneath a vehicle to try to control a leak, we have the ability to lift the vehicle there on the side of the roadway or wherever it may be located. But it can also be used to help stabilize other things on a scene.
All right.
Next compartment back here, this is Rik Compartment number 3. This is for small pump offs, so small commuter vehicles, things along those lines, maybe small work trucks. You've got a Versamatic pump, pneumatic pump there that can transfer those products back and forth. You also have the grounding and bonding kit in the back with the Megger unit to make sure that we're getting a true earth ground, and then the hoses stored up above, and you've got some catch basins and absorbent material also.
So you also have a Weldon pump for doing a transfer of a 306, 406, and I believe that's kept on the foam truck. Tell us a little bit about the foam truck and its capabilities.
So the foam truck is a large open bed truck. Large commercial open bed truck that has a lift gate assembly on it. That truck carries 550 gallons of foam concentrate, Class B foam. It also carries drums that foam can be dispensed into if we need to get it to remote locations, or it's also plumbed to be able to work with an around-the-pump inductor where it can turn any of our engines into a full foam appliance, and we could get foam out of any of the discharges. In addition to that, it also stores some of the salvage and overpack drums that are going to be used by the agency other than what we carry on the truck itself. So some of the larger ones like the 95-gallon salvage and overpack drums. It also carries the bent conduit that we use for dry chem application in the event of a 306, 406 that has burnt the top off. Obviously, we're going to apply foam, but then we're going to chase it with dry chem extinguishing agent to help make sure that fire is completely out.
Yeah, it's a great tactic we learned from the first hazmat team captain in the country, Ron Gore, taught us that years and years ago.
Yeah, it's a great tactic. And then we just had a compartment that went by there. It is used for storing the unique extinguishing agents, so things like lithium X, sodium X. There's some additional absorbent there, some neutralizing agents, and other things. This is a view down the right side of the truck, so you can see the full profile. That last compartment on the right side is where we have the extended capability for hydraulic tools, saws, things like that as the mission profile this unit expands in the future.
And that long compartment right behind the right jump seat?
That's where the Propane Flare Kit is stored. It's a tall piece of equipment, so we put that large compartment in there specifically for storing that propane flare. So inside of there is a 1-inch propane flare that allows us to burn down any overfilled or pressurized or damaged tanks. We're also working on getting a CNG kit to be able to also burn down CNG in the event we respond to a city bus, garbage truck, or some of the commercial vehicles that are using CNG also.
Right. I love the name of that flare off kit, Dragon Slayer. That's just great. Great name.
It does breathe fire.
Indeed it does.
So now we're looking over at the left side number 2 compartment. This is our recovery area. So you've got your open head drums for your solids, closed head drums for liquids. Inside that open head drum is also a 30-gallon closed head drum. You also have the smaller portable gas containers there. And you have a 35-gallon lab pack up top in addition to booms, pads, and more absorbent material there.
And in case you guys didn't know this, and you probably did the same thing we've all been doing, is using the term salvage or overpack. And we've been using those terms wrong. We've probably been putting the wrong products in these things. And Derek actually just did a podcast with Bobby and Mike, the Hazmat guys, on some of the legalities of it and what you're supposed to or not put in these types of salvage or overpacks, as we've always called them. So I encourage you to go to the Hazmat Guys website, check it out. It's a good listen or watch. I think they did it both ways when recording it. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, the simple drum also has some very simple rules that we're supposed to follow.
Right. And I wonder how many people actually do. That's the key. But that was a great podcast.
The next compartment here is the Rik compartment. So it's currently set up for hazmat RIT and EOD RIT. Also has capabilities down the road that it would hold the equipment for fire-related RIT. So in addition to that Rik component, you can see the skeds up top there. There's also a rope retrieval system with a mechanical advantage, because obviously when we start talking about EOD personnel or just different types of things, it may actually work to be able to haul that personnel out in the event that we had a RIT operation.
Now, you mentioned EOD. Our Orlando Fire Department is one of the few fire departments in the country that actually runs the bomb unit, EOD unit. So if your department does not, I highly recommend you get with your sheriff's department, police department, whoever runs your EOD, and get with them and ask them how you can help them for the hazmat component of it. But Derek, without revealing any secret squirrel stuff, how does Orlando hazmat help EOD?
So the EOD technicians are also all certified as hazmat technicians. They're also dual sworn as firefighters and police officers. From the very beginning of the incident to the completion of the incident, the EOD team and hazmat team work in concert to make sure that all the bases are covered. If you think about an EOD incident, any EOD call is going to involve energetic or reactive materials, which in and of themselves are hazardous materials. The air monitoring that needs to be performed, the different detection that needs to be performed. Hazmat, we're usually more well versed in that, more comfortable with it. So we supply that detection capability and component for the EOD team, and we provide their detection package when they go down range, and we also perform monitoring on scene. In addition to our personnel are trained on how to don and doff the EOD technician. So in the event that there was either an incident that occurred, whether it be related to the EOD itself or even just a medical incident, our personnel are dressed, ready for RIT, and they know how to safely and quickly get the EOD technician out of that gear so that we can start treatment.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing, because you don't want to be trying to figure it out on the go. Doing training with them ahead of time, especially if you get with them and say, hey, how can we help you? They will appreciate it.
Yeah, this next compartment here, this is our Decon compartment. So you'll notice that all the compartments are basically mission specific. So instead of having to run around to different areas of the truck and gather things, we tried to make it where each compartment had a role. So this being the Decon compartment up top there, you can see the pump sprayers. Behind that is a HEPA vacuum system. There's the ability to set up a full technical decon with the equipment up top there and decon solutions. On the lower shelf, you have a single lane decon tent that can be set up for decontaminating a member of the community or even our hazmat techs if it is determined that we don't need a technical decon, but we still want to do a wet decon. We have that ability with that single lane tent. In addition to that, we do carry the dry decon components that kind of expands our capabilities from wet to dry and even just ventilation operations.
Yeah, and it's great to have. We've come a long way with our decon system.
Yeah, not everything needs to be multiple pools and water. We've found that that's actually used very little.
Right.
So this final compartment on the left side of the truck, this is stabilization. So it's got shoring and stabilization struts in there. It also has lifting capabilities with lifting bags and cribbing. Again, these things can be used on a hazmat operation, but it also fits the role of the expanding possibilities of this truck in the future for VMR type operations. But it is important to understand that on hazmat calls, we may need to look into shoring and stabilizing things because we have containers that have been turned over on their side, whether it's a large vehicle or just a large container. We may have to lift it, move it, stabilize it, do something to be able to make that a safe operation.
Yeah, and I personally have had to stabilize the cab of a semi while we're pumping off the saddle tanks. So there's definitely crossover between some of the VMR stuff and the hazmat applications for sure.
And that's an important thing to consider in hazmat calls is as product is removed from a container, either by us or by the leak, center of gravity is going to change, the weight of it's going to change, so it's likely to start shifting and moving, so we have to stabilize it. The left front compartment here you'll see is set up for confined space operations and also remote air operations. Great use for remote air for us in the hazmat side of it is our decon personnel. They're going to be in PPE probably longer than anybody else, and if we can reduce their labor and their burden physically and also reduce the consumption of resources and having to swap them out constantly, putting them on an air reel makes that operation easier to extend out with the same personnel.
And you have electronic awning, I see there on both sides, right?
Yes, on both sides of the truck, there's the electronic awning to protect us from the beautiful sun in the Sunshine State and gives us a little bit of protection from the rain also. One of the nice features of the awning system is it actually has a wind sensor. So if we do get one of those thunderstorms that moves through, the awning system will actually retract itself once the winds reach a certain speed.
That's great.
Prevent any damage.
And you guys have a pretty extensive light package on top.
Yeah, there's a significant LED light package on here. It's amazing what the LED technology has done as far as with how they can focus the light to where before we would use a light tower, and we really don't need a lot of those things anymore because these LED light packages will basically make it daytime even at 2 o'clock in the morning and reduces those trip hazards, makes a safer working environment for everybody.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's an impressive unit. So bringing us back, for somebody that's getting ready to maybe purchase something like this or start the building process or get into hazmat, give me just a couple quick little nuggets that you would suggest for them.
Well, if your agency is looking to get into hazmat, I would say determine what your funding sources are going to be. You have federal and state and regional funding vehicles that you can look into, but also you're going to have some municipal funds coming from your own department. Hazmat can become expensive very quickly. You have a lot of consumable items, a lot of things that even though you might not use them, they're going to expire, and a lot of the equipment is expensive. So look at the profile of your community, what hazards you have, focus on those, build out that response capability, and then over time expand a little bit more for those exotics that maybe you don't have on a regular basis but could be transported through your community or could later on be part of the industry in your community. In addition to that, if you're looking to build a hazmat unit, I would encourage you to go visit places. That's what I did. I took advantage of the opportunity when I was on vacation to pop in, talk to the people, get some information on it, find out what they like, what they didn't like, what they would maybe do differently, and some of their justifications for why they built things the way that they did. And look at what you've had in the past and ask your team members, what would you like to see different? What works for you? One of the things that we found was on our previous hazmat unit, we would have to move equipment out of the way to get to other equipment.
Yeah.
With the walk-through cab design, it really eliminated that. All equipment is within easy reach. Personnel don't have to stand inside of the compartment to reach things on a top shelf that weigh 100 pounds and have no good handholds. That was a huge push when we were doing the design on this truck, was improving access, but also improving crew safety. By having that walk-through design, the lower stuff is on the exterior. The things that would normally be on those higher shelves, well, that's accessible now from the inside of the unit, making it safer for personnel to get down, and they don't have to move a bunch of equipment out of the way to get to it.
Yeah, all real good points. Well, Derek, we really appreciate it. Tell us where they can find you.
You can find me on social media. I stalk a lot of the different hazmat groups on social media. You can also find me by email at derek.shaman@outlook.com. In addition to that, you might find me teaching somewhere. I like to go around and teach at different departments, teaching at conferences, things along those lines, doing presentations there. Bob and I get out there and we try to teach as much as we can. We really enjoy it.
And we learn a lot from other people too. It doesn't matter how big or small a department we've been to. We usually pick up something that's like, yeah, I didn't even think about that. What a great idea. So
Yeah, it's great.
Lastly, here's a couple websites for you guys to check out. Hazmat Guys, they're on Facebook and the website, www.hazmatguys.com. The Hazmat Guys Roundtable, which is Bobby and Mike, myself, and Jeff Zintek, retired captain from Arizona. We do a live show the first Tuesday of every month at 9 p.m. Eastern. We look over different incidents, discuss some role play, and you can chime in. Hazmat Group 2 on Facebook. I believe we're up to 7,000 plus followers now. The Hazmat Group and Common Sense Group are great places to ask questions about meters, sensors, something not working, what have you. It's just a great resource for you to have, especially if you're on a hazmat team. So I want to thank the sponsors. As I mentioned, the Hazmat Guys podcast, Bobby and Mike. Anything about hazmat, I'm sure they have a podcast, so I think they're for like 360 something episodes now. Check them out. They also have a training drill book called National Emergency Response Hazmat Drills, or NERD. I think I see it on Derek's shelf right back there. Yep, there it is. Don't reinvent the wheel.
It's great for building scenarios for training.
Absolutely. Don't reinvent the wheel. Get the book. There's 50 different types of drills. You might recognize some of the names in there of people that contributed to it. It's a great thing to do, whether it's a tabletop exercise or something you're just going right out there and doing. So I encourage you to check that out. And if you or your department would like to be spotlighted here on Hazmat 101 Consultant Spotlight, please check us out. Or if you'd like to be a sponsor of the show, contact us at bob@thehazmat101consultants.com. And we'd love to have you and showcase your department and your equipment. With that, thank you, Derek. Thank you again very much. I appreciate it. And everybody,
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And everybody stay safe.